Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. Another entry here based on your suggestion. I'm probably going to do this one and then maybe one more, and that'll wrap up this go around, and then I'll start focusing some more on the urban legends and the ghosts and spirits side. This one has to do with a suggestion involving, I guess you could call it like Nordic mythology or Norse mythology. I have covered somewhat some of the past Cryptids and Monsters, some of the other mythologies tied to this. So it was interesting to come across this again. Never heard about this particular cryptid. In fact, I was debating about whether I should associate it more with my Ghosts and Spirits channel rather than this one, if but for the fact, and the reason why I went with this one is because this shares a lot of characteristics with ghosts, but whenever it's in its prime form, I guess you could call it, it is a physical form, so it is not like a true ghost. And so this one has to do with an entity of sorts that's called, and I think this is how you say it correctly, the Draugr. Although there's apparently another way to say it is Draugr or Draugr. So I'm not exactly sure the correct pronunciation. I'm just going to go by what hopefully is phonetically, in this case, the Draugr. And then I'll talk about all its characteristics and showcase again why it's more on the cryptid side rather than, let's say, the ghost side. So what is the Draugr? Well, you're looking at a picture of it here. It's something that has been a long ways back in Norse and Nordic mythology. We're talking about a creature that, for all intents and purposes, is an undead creature. It's someone that actually used to be a human, and then once that human became deceased, then depending on, I guess, its characteristics during its lifetime, it can turn into this, which it sounds like, I mean, the easiest comparison is it sounds like a loose variation of a zombie, because it's an undead person. But the difference is this thing can change its size, can change its form, can change even into animals. And then on top of that, it can visit people not just in the living side, but it can also visit them in their dreams too, as well. So this is not a very nice creature to have around. And the main reason for this is, again, how it lived during its lifetime influenced how it came to be this Draugr. As far as its actual appearance, it's been described as having like a rotten look about it. Again, basically think of it like a zombie of some sort. It has decomposing flesh. It has exposed, I guess you could call it, bones. It has a very just horrible look to it. And then on top of that, it can grow to a much larger size. Apparently, it has the ability to enlarge itself, so much so it can be almost massive, like gigantic, almost like a giant of sorts. And then on top of that, it has the ability to what's called swim, in this case, through solid matter. That's how it escapes its grave. Because again, the Draugr is basically it's a buried person that somehow comes back to life, and how it does so is it quote unquote swims through solid matter, in this case the crypt that it was tied into or buried in, and then it forms itself back on top of land, and then it goes and wreaks havoc. Now, how you come across a Draugr and then basically incur its wrath is you can come across it just inadvertently, just if you happen to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. If you're there, the Draugr may sense hostility, and the reason for this is because its whole purpose is it's very greedy. It's trying to protect usually something that it has in its possession. And the reason for this is because the most common cause of someone turning into Draugr is because they are very greedy in life. They are people that hoarded things. They are people that were selfish about things. They are people that just completely were just fixated on having as many possessions as possible, maybe having as much money as possible by whatever means necessary. Just think about the most rotten things you can think of when it comes to people and let's say their fascination with money and possessions, well, that was a Draugr under the living phase when they were human. And then once they died, they were purportedly buried with their possessions. And then anyone that comes across near their grave, or anyone that comes across and tries to steal those materials, then that's when you incur their wrath, because they come to life, they start chasing the person. Apparently, they can even devour the person. In some cases, if they're in their large forms, even burying them, I'm sorry, devouring them outright, just completely whole. And in other cases, they absolutely just rip people apart just to ensure again that in their greedy selves, they can keep possession of their treasures. This extends even all the way to animals. This is how fixated they are to ensure that no one gets near their treasures. If any animal is apparently feeding nearby, the Draugr will not even tolerate this. They will chase the animal, so much so that they are driven almost mad in terms of a frenzied state. Here you have, in this case, a zombie of some sort, a super zombie, because apparently these Draugrs, despite having like the frail look to them, they have superhuman strength. They can run really fast. They can move about with great agility. So here they are chasing these poor animals, and they actually chase them to death, because these animals, they are driven so far out by their Draugr, just constantly running and running, not giving any chance to, I guess, take a point of exhaustion, that the animals actually die from exhaustion right then and there. And then on top of that, the Draugr, whenever if anyone comes by that again tries to be near their possession, they will eat, if they're not actually, let's say, like I said earlier, devouring them or eating them or tearing them apart, then they'll actually take a second form of torture, which is, in this case, driving people insane. And this is where I was talking earlier, where they visit like people in their dreams. Apparently the Draugr will follow someone, and then when that person later goes to sleep, let's say in their residence, the Draugr will visit them in their sleep, and then either torment them in their sleep or do something so much so that it's the whole point is to try to drive them insane. And then when the person wakes, the reason that they know that they've been visited by this entity is because there they are waking up, and then there's something there in terms of a small artifact, a small gift, whatever it is that was not there before. That's when you know that you've been visited, in that case by a Draugr. As far as any other traits with the Draugr, it's mainly, if you wanted to, let's say, know how to kill a Draugr, there's one way to do so, pretty much it follows like the same manner. If, let's say, you're working with a zombie, you cut off its head, and then like in this case, if you suspect that there's a Draugr nearby and there happens to be a certain corpse in a graveyard, then you bring up the body, and this is during the daytime because apparently the Draugr only do so at night. They only work at night. And then you take up the body, you cut off its head, you just completely burn everything alive, in terms of it just turn it to ashes, in other words, and then you dump those ashes into the sea. And the whole purpose of this is to ensure that 100% there is nothing left at all of this Draugr for it to come by and to come back on. How they're created, I hinted this again a couple minutes back. It's the idea that if someone is very, very greedy in life, then there's a good chance that the family will suspect that this person will turn into a Draugr later on in life. And the way to find this out is after someone dies, I don't know what the timeline is afterward, but after someone dies, if you place them in a, let's say, your standard position where they're just lying flat, and then all of a sudden they go upright, let's say about a day later, like let's say you find the Draugr is no longer in a horizontal position and instead is in a sitting position or is in some other position completely different than what it was before, then you'll know that this person had turned into a Draugr. And again, there's a suspicion that the way you know is also because the way the person lived in life will tell you if there's a chance that they'll be a Draugr later on too. And so when you have that, let's say, suspicion, and you want to make absolutely certain, you want to give this thing a chance to even turn into a Draugr, it will, but there's a way to apparently prevent it from escaping its crypt and then haunting, I guess, the term is hunting, or trying to attack others around it. And so what it's done is when someone dies and they're recently deceased, they take this corpse and they place straws and twigs among their clothes. Then apparently the big toes are tied together. I guess this is supposed to confuse the Draugr and not make it able to, I guess, walk upright or walk around freely. And then also there's needles that are driven into the soles of their feet. Again, also to make sure to make things much harder for this Draugr to walk. And then on top of that, the way the coffin is laid into the crypt is it's laid and then everyone surrounds the crypt as it's being laid down. So that way the idea is the Draugr, while it's being, I guess, laid in rest in the crypt, it can somewhat see around itself even though it's dead. But if the people are surrounding its environment, then the Draugr has no idea like where it's being buried necessarily. And then that way, when it truly wakes up and it's time for it to, let's say, uh, um, come about and then come out at night, then it can't see, quote unquote, see where it's going. Then on top of that, there's apparently some kind of stone that's placed on top of the place. It's supposed to be some kind of special stone of some sort of rune stone where it has some kind of inscription on it. It's supposed to help keep the Draugr tied to the crypt, so that way even when it wakes up and it tries to come about, it cannot escape. All those conditions are supposed to help ensure that the Draugr is kept in its crypt forever. Like it cannot come out unless someone actually, I guess, opens the thing or somehow finds another way for it to come out. Another way too is the corpse is carried feet first into the grave too. Again, all to add confusion with regards to Draugr and make sure that it cannot escape its permanent conditions. But other than that, another way to make sure that, luckily there's a telltale sign that you're near a presence of a Draugr. Let's say it's the middle of the night, it's the blackest of night possible, and you're walking around somewhere, and then you see like a very soft glow with, let's say, a mound of dirt, and you know that that's a location where normally there's people buried. If you see that mound, like that glow associated with that mound of dirt, then that's supposed to be an indication that there's Draugr there as well. And so that's when you steer clear of it and ensure that you're no longer near its area. And then, of course, absolutely, that you're also not doing anything to try to get it out of its location, too. So what do you guys think? The Draugr, apparently, again, a Norse or Nordic mythology of some sort, a creature that's been around for a very long time. Not too many reports nowadays, it seems like, with regards to this thing coming out of its grave and then causing havoc anywhere in the world. But still, it was apparently a much more common thing hundreds of years back, again, during the Nordic days. So if anyone has any more information about this strange creature, about this pretty dangerous creature as well, that would be great to hear. Those of you that are Walking Dead fans, this is probably about the closest you can get to, let's say, having a zombie. Who knows? Maybe there was something like this. If this was absolutely 100% true back in those days, then this was the closest thing that we probably would have had to an outright like zombie epidemic of sorts happening way back when. So crazy stuff if that was truly the case. So, all right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.